Openly burning copies of the Quran. I'm a massive believer in free speech. I campaign about it on this show all the time. But openly burning copies of a religious book like the Quran, I think that does cross a line. I don't think you should defend that necessarily using free speech as the defense, should we?
Well, I don't defend it as a matter of taste. I'm not advocating that people burn the Quran, but I think we should be politically free to burn any book, right? We should just acknowledge that books are books created by people, right? And the idea that some considerable number of people in the Muslim world see otherwise, right, and would imagine that a specific book is more important than any specific person or a group of people. It's just upside down ethically and politically in a way that we just have to recognize. It's just, I mean, just take, leave aside the burning of books. Just take just the disrespect for religious traditions. You have a Broadway play, the musical, like the Book of Mormon, right, which was very funny and which most Mormons didn't much care for. But what they did to protest that was they took out ads, rather cheeky ads, in Playbill, the magazine that you get when you walk into a Broadway theater. And this was all in good fun, and it was really, they tried to recruit for Mormonism within Playbill, and it was delightful. And that was and yet they voiced their opposition to the basic project that was poking fun at their religion. But the thing to notice, of course, is that a Book of Islam Broadway musical that poked similar fun at Islam would have been and would still be unthinkable, and not just in Baghdad or Kandahar, but in New York, right? I mean, the security concerns that would attend such a production would be excruciating, and that disparity should be intolerable to us.
What about this story where the band, the 1975, who are a rock band, they go to Malaysia. They know that Malaysia has anti-gay laws, but they accept a booking to go and perform on stage there. And then the lead singer, Matty Healy, decides to kiss his male band member on stage in a deliberate act of defiance. So it turned out that he'd done something similar in 2019 in Dubai, which also has anti-gay laws. So it wasn't his first journey on this rodeo. And it also came after inflammatory comments he'd made, which were perceived to be homophobic and offensive a few months ago. It came out on a podcast. So there's a bit of hypocrisy there. But the basic principle of going to a country like Malaysia and deliberately, flagrantly breaching the conventions of that country, is that a sensible thing to do? You're allowed to do it, obviously. You can do it and get all the credit you may want from Twitter for doing it. But should people do that?
Well, I don't know. I think you have to view that on a case-by-case basis. I mean, I think there's an argument for not going to places where there's such religious intolerance that you don't want to support anything about the norms in that society. Or I suppose you can go as this band did and protest those norms and hopefully make a point that lands politically in that society. And I think that's just a judgment call, and I could go either way with that. Yeah, but I mean, the larger point to make here, though, is that we can't afford, we, the West, secular societies, diverse societies, pluralistic societies, globally speaking, can't conform to the religious taboos of any specific community. I mean, right now, if you go on ChatGPT-4 and ask it to tell you a joke about Jesus, it will tell you a joke about Jesus. And if you ask it to tell you a joke about Buddha, it will tell you a joke about Buddha. They're not good jokes, but it'll tell you jokes. But if you ask it to tell you a joke about Muhammad, it will refuse because of the religious sensitivities of Muslims. And if you ask it about that incoherence, it will basically become as evasive as Andrew Tate was when you interviewed him.
Well, you know what was interesting? I was actually going to reference. I was going to reference another interview actually, which Richard Dawkins, when I asked him about speaking out like this in the way that you've been doing just now, and his reply was really I found it quite chilling actually. Take a look. Are you worried about? Did you get threats because of the positions you've taken on some of these things? Yeah. When you saw what happened to Salman Rushdie, didn't send a shutter through. Are you saying no, you don't want to talk about it? Or...
Yes.
Right. I mean, that's interesting in itself. Because there are areas which you would prefer not to discuss.
Yes. I should have said that before we started.
Yeah. No, but listen, I think it's sad that you can't. I don't think anything should be off limits in interviews with people like you. I mean, I thought that was really interesting that someone like Dawkins just would not answer out of fear, it turned out.
Yeah, well, I would have to ask Richard what his motive was there. I can imagine it might not have been fear, but just the pragmatic concern that acknowledging the threat landscape is in some way unwise, right? That you're actually increasing your security concerns by admitting that you have them on some level. But I mean, this is just plain for everyone to see that there is this vast difference between criticizing Islam, however peripherally, however, I mean, even on the tiniest points, to just depicting the Prophet Muhammad in a cartoon, right, or naming a teddy bear or a bear in a South Park episode, Muhammad, right? I mean, this is the kind of thing that can get embassies burned in a dozen cities, right? I mean, this is just, there's nothing like this coming from any other religion. And that difference is important, right? I'm not saying that people should go out of their way to criticize Islam or any other religion necessarily, though I think when push comes to shove, we have to just acknowledge that we need good reasons for believing our most important beliefs and figuring out how to organize our societies, right? So just when people are resting on dogma, we should be increasingly impatient with that, and we'd be impatient with astrologers if they were trying to change our laws and our politics too. But with Islam, we have to recognize that it deserves all of the respect that every other religion does, and all of the patience that every other religion does in a pluralistic and diverse society, but no more, right? And we're literally building it into our most advanced artificial intelligence, this double standard, and we're doing it out of fear, right? We can call it religious tolerance, but it is just fear. It's just we have been successfully bullied into having a double standard, and it's dysfunctional, and it's ultimately dangerous. I mean, the problem for Salman Rushdie was that there weren't 10,000 Salman Rushdies the very next day, as there should have been, and that's why he had this asymmetric risk for decades, and ultimately suffered a terrible attack. We should stand shoulder to shoulder with Salman, and I'm not saying Richard wasn't doing that. Richard's an extraordinarily brave public intellectual, and he's been on the front lines of this debate for decades.
Sam Harris, great to talk to you. I really appreciate it. Your podcast is making sense. You make a lot of sense. I appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you very much.